This is Also Cool Sounds Like. I'm Alejandra.
Yeah, it's kind of like a treehouse. We've always talked about it as kind of like this weird treehouse vibe where it's like we just want it to be good for the sake of making it good, and because it's so DIY, it's kind of makes it even more treehousey. We can just we build a new doorway into a thing. Like, it would be sweet if there's a door here, and we can just figure out how to do it.
Wouldn't it be cool if we raised this area?
Yeah.
One night this past summer, I put on my mask, took a deep breath, and biked down to the Diving Bell Social Club to meet my friend Christina. When I got there and climbed the long stairs up to the venue, it seemed like a different emotion passed through my brain with every step. This was the first show that I had gone to since the pandemic started. I felt excited about walking up the familiar steps, a little nervous about safety, anxious that I wouldn't know how to interact with people anymore, but really mostly just happy to be out on a summer night. I've waited a long time to record this episode. I spoke with the guys at the Diving Bell all the way back in last December, and finally this summer things were opening up in a way that both I and the Diving Bell felt comfortable with. When I got to the top of the stairs and turned into the bar, I was greeted by such a warm welcome that I felt like I started glowing. Austin, who greeted me, seemed just as excited to be there as I was. He told me that the show I was there to see, the Coven Drag Show, was one of the events they used to host before the pandemic. The fact that it was happening again felt hopeful. Unfortunately, the audio I recorded at Coven that night was lost in a computer crash. Side note, please back up your data, people. And I truly wish that you could have heard the energy that was in the venue that night. I was in awe of the energy that was tossed from the stage to the audience and then back again, as performer after performer made the stage entirely their own. I was so happy that this was the show I was going to think about the Diving Bell with for this episode, because it seemed to be exactly what the guys had in mind for the kind of thing they wanted the Diving Bell to host, the kind of thing they wanted the Diving Bell to be.
So we, Austin and I, hail from the DIY venue, The Bog. And we started there, and we were looking to make something a little different, something a little bigger. And we kind of explored this old chip factory that we wanted to turn into a venue with a few people from Psychic City. And there was a big group of us. And with the property, with the rental, came this boat. There was like a boat included with the rental. It was kind of parked out front. And so we were thinking of maybe doing it like nautical themed, and so the idea of the Diving Bell kind of came up from that. And also I for my birthday a few years ago, I had some friends pitch in for a really cool kind of replica Diving Bell helmet that just kind of sat on my home bar for a while, and then the pieces kind of fell into place and the Diving Bell was born. The way that the space was introduced to us was I was co-owning the bar on the first floor. Now it's called Barbosa. At the time it was Blizzards. And the landlord of the building also ran Champs, which is the kind of dilapidated sports bar on the second floor. And so I guess the entire time that I was at Blizzards, we didn't know that on the third floor and fourth floor, it was just a bunch of stuff. So one day was brought up to the third floor and shown what was up there, and kind of given this pitch of like, hey, yeah, you want to do something up here? And against our better judgment at the time, I called Austin and just said, we have to do this. This is maybe a crazy idea, but we did. And like Jason said, it was just full of garbage, like literal bags of trash, lots of old restaurant junk. It was pretty heavy.
Yeah, and that's kind of when I came into the project, because I went to go see a show at Catacombs, and that's where I saw Austin, and I've met Austin through the Bog because I played the show there with my band, and he was like, yeah, you got to come see this place. It's right close to your house. I mean, it's nothing yet, but we're trying to build something out of it. And I'm like, yeah. And I quit my job I was working at. I was like, oh my God, I'd love to do anything to help you guys out. And so I went there and I looked at all this junk and I was like, how do I be a part of this crazy thing?
Before the Diving Bell, Evan and I and a couple other folks who have kind of gone on to be very influential in the creation, founding of the Diving Bell, we were all really involved in this DIY space, which was down in St. Henry. Still there, actually. It was like a super DIY space in a basement, kind of the same amount of stairs as the diving bell, but like in an opposite direction. But basically, that was really awesome. It's where we met Sarah Armiento, who's works with us at the diving bell with a lot of the booking, but also has started Hot Tramp Management and is super amazing. But anyway, we all kind of like started working together down there. And that's also where we met Jason. Jason was playing in a band. It was kind of like the first place where, kind of the launching pad for all these kinds of things. The bog is like, as I say, a basement. And it was great in a lot of ways, but it was limiting in a lot of other ways too. We were always kind of looking for some sort of way to expand on what we were doing down there. And yeah, we found this opportunity at the time to kind of go in with a couple of other DIY venue spaces of, I guess that was like 2006, early 2016, whatever. There was like, Psychic City, as Evan mentioned. There was a couple other people from the bog, and we were all basically trying to rent this big warehouse building to start like the ultimate DIY venue. That, didn't end up happening because we couldn't negotiate with the guy. It wasn't going to work out. And it's actually really good that it didn't in retrospect. But basically, like, we were still, Evan and I anyway, we're still kind of like peripherally interested in the idea of kind of like taking the bog out of the basement, so to speak. And that was kind of like a couple of months later, as Evan said, he kind of was randomly told by this landlord guy, like, oh, you should see upstairs. So that's kind of when we started, like, I mean, as we've mentioned, it was, that show Hoarders with like people who just like can't throw away stuff like compulsively. It was stacked up to the like there was so much stuff in there.
Yeah, like dishwashers, probably 3 or 4 of them,
Or dishwashers.
Up to the ceiling. There was we had to remove all the stuff ourselves, but it took we rented like a U-Haul truck, like a 3-ton moving truck, and we filled that up 10 different times. And actually the pile of junk turned out to be a really good kind of barometer for showing people, like, because anytime we were really excited about the space and the potential, but like anyone that we would show the space and they would see the potential too and not just see the scary giant pile of junk, I feel like that was a really good way of kind of gauging who's in. Jason was definitely immediately just no holding back, was just like, sick.
Evan Johnson and Austin Rinch opened the Diving Bell back in 2018. I remember that year, or around that time, being a moment when so many of the venues I deeply loved in Montreal were closing. Whether due to fines from noise complaints, rent prices going up in certain neighborhoods, or just a loss of community support, it seemed like place after place that I considered indispensable to Montreal nightlife was shutting their doors. I think that's one of the reasons why I loved the Diving Bell so much from the very first time I went there. From its very start, it seemed like it fit in with the heart and soul of the places I felt Montreal was losing. It felt like it had always been around, even when it first opened.
We put all our heart and DIY-ness into the venue. I mean, since it started,
we had done everything ourselves.
Evan and Austin built like the stage pretty much. There was a weird half stage that started. I guess no one completed it. And then
he built it, but took it apart to bring some of it down to Champs for the
student parties. You have it. There you have it. Because you got to recycle. It's good. Yes. It was good like that. And then, and then they built the 2 rooms on the side. That wasn't there. There was a billiard table there that we moved out. And, so yeah, there was. I don't know.
The spirit of the Diving Bell has always. The whole kind of concept, the thesis, I guess, of the Diving Bell has always kind of been that we wanted to. Because we were so involved in like the DIY music, the bog was definitely like a music venue, and we kind of started near the end of our kind of involvement there to try to start doing some like comedy shows and stuff, but the space itself was really only super conducive for a music venue, and that was always something that we kind of wished was not the case. We always recognize how many cool things are going on in Montreal, and always thought it would be cool to have a space that could be, more could represent better what actually is going on in the city.
Yeah, that was something that was important to us from the get-go, really, was, there's, I think a lot of venues, around the world could be known for, being one thing or the other. This is more of like, a rock venue, or this is more of a theater space, and we wanted to make sure that we were touching on everything. So at the beginning, it was nobody knew we existed, and we would be reaching out to people, some of whom actually had to come in and look at the space before it was finished, so they would see the garbage. And a few people turned us down, but after we kind of reached out to a few people in different niches, then, like Austin said, it started kind of, instead of us reaching out, we were doing more fielding. And I say it's Austin and Sarah are the champions of this. They've done an incredible job. But all that to say that we want to have as much uniqueness and difference and diversity in our acts as possible.
And yeah, letting the kind of letting the performers themselves kind of dictate the shows. Like, we do actually set up some I guess you could call them in-house events as well, where we're actually actively booking people. Like, we do these cover nights where we get a bunch of bands and it's themed and they play cover songs. The last one we did before the lockdown was an anti-Valentine's Day kind of 80s sad songs kind of night, which is super fun. People always ask me what's the best way to get a show here to talk. Obviously sending an email is good, but I feel the best connections that we've gotten have always come from people who are at a show already, and we just start chatting, and they're at, say, the drag show. I always just prefer it. I feel you get a much better sense, because you can also just be sitting in the space and be talking about ideas and stuff. But yeah, when it's kind of people coming up to us who are actually at the show and are kind of already familiar, or at least somewhat familiar with the various restrictions or just what the scenario is.
We love really unique ideas too. And one of the things when we started was we wanted to be kind of a blank slate venue. So half of that was also our budget. We had no money to be actually decorating, but the other half of that is that we wanted to, like Jason said, we did a lot of kind of bazaars at the beginning, and kind of vintage sales and pop-ups. We wanted to have the walls blank so that people could put up their own art and could kind of transform the space. So yeah, like Austin was saying, when somebody's in there and we're chatting with somebody to say, hey, I've got a really cool idea, we could make a little zone over here that people walk through, kind of an interactive art space. We love that kind of stuff, changing up the lights and making it look completely unique for a particular event.
There usually has to be kind of another reason besides just some guy who has $150 to pay for a sound guy, because then it's just we want to make sure that the show itself is actually going to be something that is impactful. But I'm always trying to gauge kind of what people are, what people are looking for in the space. And I feel personally myself, I respond a lot better to people who are trying to set up this kind of community oriented thing, and are trying to set up this, something that obviously sounds interesting and sounds like something people will come to, but also just something that seems just on another level, whatever that level is, from just I want to just I just want to do a show and then go home. It's ones that really seem like they're going to be kind of community powerful.
We want to not in an overbearing way, but create a sense of community, and not saying, hey, you've got to be part of this club now that you're here, but like Jay said, just we're really welcoming. One thing that has always been important to us is I don't know, we've all been musicians, we've all gigged at different venues, and there's a certain degree of, I think, cynicism and people and staff particularly maybe being jaded, about just seeing the same thing every night. And so it can be kind of intimidating to book shows maybe for your first time. And so what I hope, is when people book a show and they come back for a second time, is that, they went through a pleasant experience. They saw that, you don't have to be an asshole to make this thing work. That's what I'd hope.
We were definitely very conscious about consciously trying to avoid the maybe it's not classic, but I feel maybe 10 or so years ago, back when I was really like starting to go and see live music, specifically local bands, that there was kind of like an acceptance of like a certain kind of aloofness, and it was kind of cooler to be a little bit more aloof, whereas I feel like we're kind of the opposite of that. I feel like it's kind of like, I kind of hate that. I kind of would much rather have like a goofy conversation with someone than like, oh wow, cool, like, like it's just about like having fun. Like that's the only reason we're doing these things. Shows are fun, and you should be there to have fun, and that's why I think the best shows are the ones that are just not taking themselves too seriously, taking themselves seriously to a point of like professional, like I want this to be the best possible show it can be, but also just, it's still just, we're just doing crazy silly things because they're fun. Essentially, it's the main important thing. Really, like the only thing that keeps us or any venue like us going is, the support of the community. People, not even necessarily like support as in like financial, like people paying us to come and stuff, but just like people coming and, just actually getting out there and doing stuff. Like it's so much easier. Obviously everyone's guilty of, clicking like, oh yeah, I'm attending that. And like, it's the best shows, the shows that do the best, both kind of like spiritually and like financially, are always the ones where there's like a real sense of like duty kind of from the community. People are like, no, I'm happy to come and pay what you can. $10 suggested, I'm happy to pay that $10, even though I could come in with paying less, like, because you realize that you're directly supporting this thing that, it's the best. Like I love having this opportunity just to like, support directly the things that you think are important to have. And I think that sometimes like people understand that, but I think sometimes it's lost to some extent when, I don't know, like sometimes people ask us kind of like when they're thinking about booking a show or something, like, oh well, like how many people come to your venue usually? And it's kind of like, well, I mean, no one comes just to see us, like it has to be like this thing where like the like people just need to understand, especially in a post-COVID world too. I think just that like, like we just really have to like support each other. I think more so than ever, and like actually by like just showing up, I think is the main thing. Whether you're gonna like buy drinks or anything, even just like being there in spirit, physically just showing your support is like a super, super important thing. And like there's really no alternative. Like for places like us to work, people just have to either show up and support or it's not going to work.
That hopeful feeling I was speaking about earlier that I got when Austin greeted me at the diving bell, it stayed with me the entire night. I was just blown away that I could go to a place and these extremely talented people would perform, would share their talent and their humor and their souls with me. Sitting there at my little table, drinking my bourbon lemonade, it made me feel hopeful, not because it felt like things were back to normal, but because I know that the best of what we had before the pandemic will continue on.
The first musical show that we had really sticks out to me. Mish Koda came and performed, and it was still in that early stages where nobody knew we existed. So it was a very intimate show in numbers. And Mish asked me if we had a ladder like 10 minutes before the show started. It's like, yeah, I think we do. And so I didn't really know what was going on. And then during Mish's set, pulled up the ladder, and Mish used it and incorporated it into the entire performance, dancing with it. It was awesome. It was super inspiring, and it was really emotional performance, and kind of gave us this idea of, okay, wow, this is, we can be this space where this cool, magical stuff happens. That's a huge one though. I'll never forget that.
What really stands up, the types of shows and events that really stick out for me are the ones where people have kind of like really transformed the space and are kind of experimental with using the space and the walls and everything. just because there's actually like quite a weird amount of stuff that can be done. I like it when people come in there and then maybe they're familiar with the space from another show, but they're like totally like kind of, you know, just blown away by how different it looks. As Jason's saying, it's whether it's setting up some weird art. We've done a lot of these really cool kind of mixed media shows where there's like, you know, there's some musical performances, but there's also like art up on the walls and weird kind of like people in crazy like costumes walking around, and like it's very interactive. Definitely like the full kind of when the space is used kind of all over the place. I like that. As I mentioned before, like the whole paradigm of socializing is going to be quite different to some extent. After like going back to normal might be even like a weird way to even say it. Like I feel like it's just gonna be a different world already. It's notoriously, everyone knows it's difficult to get people to show up and to make a arts-based career something that is, you know, sustainable. But I think that more than ever, like I think that there's probably also a lot of kind of fluff and like weird traditions that aren't necessarily going to be like a part of the norm as much anymore. Like I hope that people are going to be kind of more aware than ever of how important artistic communities are and how they need to be, you know, you have to support them if you want them to exist. And like, yeah, I feel like we're better equipped, weirdly, even though we've just kind of been waiting around for months and months. I feel like it's kind of been like a time to meditate a little bit on what we want to do and how we want to do it. I feel like we're going to be able to do things more efficiently. Like from the community is we don't really have control over that, which is important. But like I think from our end too, I think we're going to be better set up to like, just as far as like we're a bit older now, we're a bit more experienced with how the whole machine of the diving bell works, and I feel like we'll be even more confident about just putting on things and like the efficiency of it all, so that we can do better, bigger things with less effort. Definitely like the last 2 years or whatever have been definitely a lot of trial and error, and it did unfortunately feel like right before everything, like the first months of 2020, January and like half of February, very, very optimistic times, because everything was seeming to kind of like, okay, everything's coming together now, this is great. And of course, it's unfortunate that never ended up happening this year, but it would have been so much worse if we weren't at that point before things had to shut down, if we were still in like a kind of scrambling, like, oh, I don't know if we got this yet kind of vibe. Like we have that confidence of like, we could see the light at the end of the tunnel. And even though the tunnel got way longer in some sort of weird kind of like horror movie style thing, you know, when you can't get out of it. But like, I feel very confident about moving forward in a way that like, yeah, the artists are there, the communities are ready, and we're also more ready physically. We've done these renovations to the space. We've rested a little bit. It's good.
This episode marks the last Also Cool Sounds Like episode I will be writing and hosting. Don't worry, starting in the new year, you'll have a new host continuing the podcast on to bring you more thoughts and conversations about the creators and artists that call Montreal home. I started this podcast almost a year ago because Montreal was my home, and this seemed like the best way that I could celebrate it. But Montreal isn't home for me anymore. I'm recording this episode at my dad's house in Connecticut, where I'm spending the holidays before moving to the UK and then beyond. I've lived in Montreal for 10 years, and saying goodbye to it feels strange and sad. That city made me who I am, and I know that I couldn't have picked a better place to mold me. That's why I'm so happy that I've gotten to share some of my favorite things and people that come from Montreal with all of you. If I've learned anything from this project, it's that community is everything. I know that sounds cheesy, but honestly, I can't tell you how many times the people I've spoken to for these episodes have mentioned not only people I know in Montreal, but even other people I've interviewed for the podcast. It's become clear to me that none of this, nothing anyone I spoke to was doing, would have been possible without everybody else. The places we choose to spend our time, the art we absorb, the people we speak to, those things are actively creating who we are every minute. I'm moving on to be molded by other places now, but I will be forever grateful to Montreal for creating who I am right now, and it makes me so happy to know that there are still so many people I love who will continue to be there, being shaped by it. Je t'aimerai toujours, Montréal. I miss you already. This episode of Also Cool Sounds Like was produced and edited for the last time by me, Alejandra, in collaboration with Also Cool Magazine. Music by Oren Rotowski, artwork by Malaika Storga. Check out the magazine at alsocoolmag.com or on Instagram at alsocoolmag. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other cool places you like to listen. Bye.